Good evening. I read to you tonight from the novel Beverly Hills 90210, Senior Year, a novelization by Mel Gilden based on teleplays and stories by Karen Rosin, Steve Wasserman and Jessica Klein, and Star Frohman, based on the television series created by Darren Star. Chapter 1. Clubfoot Walsh. It was not exactly a typical night at the Peach Pit, and Brandon Walsh could not help smiling. All his friends were there because it was Dylan McKay's 18th birthday. Most of his friends were Dylan's friends, and vice versa, and they were singing the birthday song. Steve Sanders and David Silver were a particular hoot, because they leaned together and howled the tune like dogs. Dylan tried to appreciate the efforts of his friends, but occasionally his body convulsed in a coughing fit. When he coughed, Brenda Walsh and Kelly Taylor looked at him with concern. Brenda was officially Dylan's girlfriend, but Kelly had some special feeling for him too. Brandon had his suspicions about how special, but he kept the suspicions to himself. Life was complicated enough without stirring up trouble on purpose. Nat conducted everybody with a damp counter towel that he held in his big fist. Nat owned the Peach Pit, and he took a personal interest in all that went on there. Also, he and Dylan had been friends long before the Walshes came to Beverly Hills from Minnesota. Brandon was on duty, and though generally Nat discouraged fraternization with the customers, he said nothing about Brandon having his arm around Nikki Witt. Nikki was a short, dark-haired girl who was cute and toned, despite her lack of interest in sports. She kept in shape by dancing, which Brandon thought of as a perversion, but he didn't complain as long as she didn't bother him about it. Brandon had no interest at all in dancing, but he had a big interest in Nikki. Their relationship was the first one he had had in a long time that gave any sign of lasting. Sitting happily among the kids was Gil Myers, who taught Advanced Placement English and was the faculty advisor of the West Beverly Blaze. He was only a few years older than the kids he taught, and he generally got along with all of them. Nobody ever called him an easy teacher, but he was a very good one. At first, Brandon had felt a little odd about calling him Gil, even at school, but he'd gotten used to it. The singing ended at last, and everybody demanded that Dylan make a speech. He smiled and shrugged in his shy way, but soon unfolded up from his chair. "Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking," Dylan began. He was interrupted by another coughing fit. Brenda took up the slack. "Unaccustomed as he is to public speaking," she said, "he wants to thank all of you for being here tonight, even though his official 18th birthday isn't until next week." "I'm glad I'm not still the only one who's old enough to vote," Donna Martin said. Around school, Donna, Brenda, and Kelly were known as the Three Musketeers, or the Three Stooges, depending on who you asked. Though they occasionally bickered among themselves, they were very close friends. Dylan recovered while Brenda spoke, and he picked up a big carving knife. He held it two-handed, like a samurai, and threatened the cake with it. "Good cough, man," Brandon said. Dylan looked awful. He'd been dragging around school the past few days, and the truth was, Brandon was surprised he'd shown up for his own party. Pleased, but surprised. "Thanks," Dylan said. "I've been practicing." He made his first incision, and began to pass around pieces of cake. "Dibs on a piece with a flower," David Silver said, while he headed for the jukebox. Like Nikki, he was preoccupied with dancing. As a matter of fact, it had been his dancing that had first attracted Donna. Brandon tried to be broad-minded. The jukebox began to play a song with an insistent, sensual beat, and Nikki turned to Brandon excitedly. "Don't you even think about it," Brandon told her. "You never let me have any fun." No, have fun. And when all the other guys are tuckered out from dancing, guess who'll still be daisy fresh?" Nikki pouted at him. A cute pout, Brandon thought, and dragged David into the open space among the tables. While Nikki and David showed the world how to dance, Brenda came over to Brandon. "Nikki's great," Brenda said. Brandon nodded. Though he knew David was basically harmless, for one thing he had eyes only for Donna, Brandon could not help being a little jealous watching him and Nikki move together. She seemed to drop all inhibitions when she danced, and some of her moves were pretty provocative. But Brandon knew he could no more dance like David than he could walk 3 feet off the ground. "This weekend, a bunch of us are going dancing at Kingston 12, Brenda said. "Steve says he can get us in without paying the cover charge." Brandon thought it unlikely that Steve could get anybody in anywhere for free. Kingston 12 was currently the hottest teen club on the map. "Have a good time," he said. "We will. If you're smart, you'll come with us, and you'll bring Nikki." Brandon and Brenda were twins, though Brandon never let her forget that he was a few minutes older, and they liked to watch out for each other. However, when Brenda did it, Brandon tended to think of her advice as meddling. "I don't dance, Brenda. I have no sense of rhythm whatsoever. I have trouble sitting in rocking chairs. I have 2 left feet. My toes are all thumbs. Get the picture?" Brenda seemed unimpressed by Brandon's protests. "I don't think that would matter to Nikki. Once you're out on the floor, let her dance rings around you. She'd really get into it. Who knows where that sort of mood might lead?" Brandon fumed. "A girl like that won't be happy for long helping you hold up the wall. Think about it." Brandon had thought about it, and he decided over and over again that he'd rather go to the dentist with her than dance with her. On the other foot, it was true that Nikki never looked so happy as when she was on a dance floor. Would it be so bad for Brandon to make her happy? Besides, with the confidence of an expert, David Silver had once told him anybody who could walk could dance. Brandon doubted that David was right, but maybe he could learn to shuffle around without stepping on Nikki's toes. By the time the song was over, Brandon had made up his mind to escort Nikki to Kingston 12 and allow her to dance rings around him. In Royal Wedding, Fred Astaire had made a hat rack look like a hell of a dancer. Brandon had to be a better dancer than a hat rack. He pulled Nikki away from David, and she beamed up at him. "Where do you learn to dance like that?" Brandon asked. "I'm completely self-taught," Nikki told him proudly. "That's what they all say. Listen, the gang's going to Kingston 12 this Saturday night. You want to come?" "With you? Clubfoot Walsh?" She was amazed. "Sure, why not? You can dance rings around me." Nikki laughed. "Oh no, Walsh. If we dance together." Too late, Brandon saw that he'd made a mistake, but he'd look like the worst kind of dork if he backed out now. "Right, together," he said and nodded. Steve barreled down on them, looking as amazed as if Brandon had walked 3 feet off the ground. "Wait a second," he said. "I'm in shock here. Brandon Walsh is coming with us to a dance club? Like, for fun?" "Absolutely," Nikki said. "And he's going to show you guys up, too." The music started again, and David came over to get Nikki again. She excitedly told him about Kingston 12. "Can't wait to compare moves with you, big guy," David said, and punched Brandon in the shoulder. He pulled her back onto the dance floor. She waved at Brandon as she went. Brandon saw his life passing before his eyes. "Nikki's kidding, right?" Brenda asked as she put down her plate. It now contained only cake crumbs. "I wish," Brandon said. Brenda grinned. "Is it possible you're becoming more open-minded in your old age?" "No, but it is possible that I'm becoming more feeble-minded," Brandon said, disgusted. "Nikki loves to dance. You'll have a great time," Brenda assured him. "Right. Why should he suffer alone?" "So, you and Dylan coming?" "We might if Dylan was well, but that cough's taken all his energy." "Some guys have all the luck," Brandon thought. "What does the doctor say?" Getting Dylan to see a doctor is more difficult than getting you onto a dance floor. Tell him it's fun. Tell him it's for its own good. Right, Brenda said. Hacking in a way that made Brandon's throat hurt just listening to him, Dylan soon left. Nikki danced the night away with David, with Steve, even with Nat. Brandon kept reminding himself that if a hat rack could dance, he could dance.